muscle car era. Chevrolet officially rated the 302 at 200. One of the greatest engines Chevrolet ever built was never supposed to exist. Not because it was too powerful for the street, not because it was too expensive to produce, and not because some executive in a clean Detroit boardroom dreamed of creating a legend. Not because the Chevy 302 was born for a far stranger reason. It was created because Chevrolet had been trapped by a racing rule, cornered by Ford's rising Mustang, and forced into a fight where the wrong engine choice could mean humiliation. The 302 was not born as a marketing idea. It was born under pressure, with engineers staring at numbers, rulebooks, casting charts, and deadlines, trying to build a weapon from whatever Chevrolet already had on the shelf. The year was 1966, and American performance was entering a new kind of war. The muscle car era was not just about stoplight drag races anymore. The battle was moving on to road courses, where engines had to breathe at high RPM, brakes had to survive repeated punishment, and cars had to turn as hard as they accelerated. Ford's Mustang was already becoming a serious threat in the new Trans Am series, organized by the SCCA, the Sports Car Club of America. The Mustang had the looks, the market momentum, and the racing attention. Chevrolet was watching from the sidelines, knowing the Camaro had to answer. But the rulebook had already drawn a line in the sand. Buried inside the SCCA regulations was a number that would define the next 3 years of American motorsport. 305 cubic inches. No engine larger than 5 liters. At first glance, it sounded like a simple displacement limit, a clean way to keep the competition fair. But inside Chevrolet, that number landed like a locked gate. The 283 small block was too small to be the ultimate answer. The 327 was too large to fit under the limit. Ford had a path it could work with, but Chevrolet had an empty space where its racing engine was supposed to be. The Camaro was coming, the Mustang was already fighting, and Chevy needed an engine that did not exist. So Chevrolet did what great engineers often do when the rulebook becomes a wall. They stopped looking for a finished engine and started looking for a recipe. Somewhere inside the Chevrolet parts system, the answer was already hiding in pieces. The crankshaft came from the 283 small block, giving the new engine a short 3-inch stroke. The bore came from the 327 small block, measuring 4 inches across. On paper, it looked almost too simple. A 283 crank, a 327 bore. Put them together, and the result was 302 cubic inches, just under the SCCA limit, completely legal. A loophole made of cast iron, steel, and calculation. But the real genius of the 302 was not only that it fit the rulebook. The real magic was what that combination did to the character of the engine. By using a large 4-inch bore with a short 3-inch stroke, Chevrolet created an over-square V8, meaning the bore was larger than the stroke. That one physical relationship changed everything. The pistons did not have to travel as far with every revolution. The rotating assembly experienced less stress at high RPM. The engine could breathe faster, climb harder, and live at speeds where most American V8s of the period started to feel like they were being pushed beyond their comfort zone. Most American V8s of that era were big-shouldered machines. They made their reputation with torque, displacement, and that deep, heavy exhaust note that seemed to roll out of the tailpipes like thunder across pavement. They were engines you felt in your chest before you saw the car. The 302 was different. It did not simply pull, it climbed. It did not just rumble, it screamed. It was a small block Chevrolet with the instincts of a road racing engine. A V8 that felt happiest when the tachometer needle swept past the places where other engines began to surrender. That is what made the 302 so strange and so addictive. It could spin comfortably to 7,000 revolutions per minute at a time when many larger American V8s were already stressed near 6,000. On a racetrack, that mattered. Every extra RPM gave the driver more room between shifts, more control through a corner, and more time to keep the engine in its strongest range. The 302 was not about lazy power. It demanded commitment. It wanted the driver to hold the gear, let the noise build, and trust the engine as the revs rose into that hard, metallic upper register. The first version arrived in 1967, and those early engines are now the rarest of all Chevy 302s. The 1967 block used a small journal design with 2.3-inch main bearing journals, and the correct casting number was 3892657. The suffix code was MO for the standard version, and MP for cars equipped with air emissions equipment. To someone walking past an open hood at a car show, it might look like just another small block Chevrolet dressed in factory parts, but to a serious collector, those numbers are not small details. They are fingerprints. They separate an ordinary engine from the first chapter of a racing legend. In 1968, Chevrolet updated the small block lineup with larger 2.45-inch main bearing journals to improve durability under sustained high RPM abuse. The 1968 302 used casting number 3914678, but the suffix code remained M.O, the same as 1967. This is where the story becomes dangerous for buyers and fascinating for historians. A 1968 large journal engine can be mistaken for a 1967 small journal engine if someone only looks at the suffix code and does not verify the casting number and journal size. On a casual spec sheet, the difference may seem small. In the collector world, it is enormous. One belongs to the earliest and rarest production year. The other belongs to the stronger transitional year. Both matter, but they do not matter in the same way. Then came 1969, and Chevrolet stamped 3 letters into muscle car mythology: DZ. The DZ302 became the version most enthusiasts remember first. Multiple correct casting numbers appeared that year, including 3932386 and 3956618, among others. These were all large journal engines, refined after 2 years of racing, development, and hard lessons. By 1969, the 302 was no longer just a clever solution to a rulebook problem. It had become a fully proven weapon, sharpened by competition, and surrounded by a reputation that was growing louder every time a Z28 came screaming out of a corner. And then there is the horsepower rating, one of the most famous quiet lies of the muscle car era. Chevrolet officially rated the 302 at 290 horsepower. That number appeared in brochures. It sat neatly on spec sheets. Dealers repeated it to buyers as if it told the whole story. But anyone who understood the engine knew something was off. A short stroke, 11.1 compression, solid lifter small block that could rev to 7,000 RPM was not behaving like a mild 290 horsepower street engine. It felt sharper than that. It pulled harder than that. It sounded angrier than that. The number did not match the machine. There were reasons for the understatement. The first was insurance. In the late 1960s, horsepower numbers were not just bragging rights, they were financial consequences. High official ratings could send insurance premiums climbing, especially for the young buyers Chevrolet wanted behind the wheel of the Camaro. A lower published number helped keep the car within reach. The second reason was strategy. If the spec sheet made the 302 look modest, then rivals might underestimate it. Let Ford read the brochure. Let the Mustang crowd think the Z8 was manageable. The truth would come out on the racetrack, where engines do not care what the brochure says. In the real world, the 302 was far stronger than its official rating suggested. Owners who ran these engines often reported output in the 370 to 380 horsepower range. Motor Trend later built a replica using factory-correct internals and tested it on a dynamometer. It made 357 horsepower. That gap between 290 and 357 is not a small misunderstanding. It is not a measurement error. It is the difference between public image and mechanical truth. Chevrolet had sold a street-legal racing engine while letting the world believe it was quieter on paper than it really was in metal. A major part of that hidden power came from the compression ratio, 11:1. That number gives the engine part of its bite. Inside the cylinders, the air-fuel mixture was squeezed violently before ignition, packing more energy into each combustion event. When the spark arrived, the result was sharper, harder, more explosive. But that kind of compression also came with demands. The 302 wanted good fuel. It wanted correct timing. It wanted careful tuning. It was not the sort of engine that tolerated neglect with a smile. Treat it lazily, feed it poorly, or tune it carelessly, and it would answer back with detonation, roughness, heat, and noise. It separated casual owners from serious ones. And you had to be serious just to buy one, because Chevrolet did not spread the 302 across the lineup. The reason came down to homologation. SCCA rules required that an engine used in Trans Am competition had to be available to the general public in a production vehicle. Chevrolet could not simply build a secret prototype engine and send it racing. It had to sell the engine, but it did not have to sell it everywhere. So the 302 was locked inside one model, one package, one identity: the Camaro Z28. If you wanted the 302, you bought a Z28. There was no ordinary Chevrolet order form where you casually checked a box and dropped the 302 into whatever car you liked. There was no broad dealer allocation program that scattered the engine across the streets. It was Z over 28 or nothing. That made the car feel special from the beginning. It was not just another Camaro with a bigger number on the fender. It was a purpose-built homologation machine, a road racing car disguised just enough to wear license plates. Between 1967 and 1969, just over 28,000 Z over 28 Camaros were built, while total Camaro production ran into the hundreds of thousands. That number matters because scarcity is part of the 302's aura today. These cars were never everywhere. They were not built in endless numbers. They were purchased by people who wanted something focused, something sharper, something less obvious than a big block street bruiser. Today, that rarity follows them everywhere. A fair condition Z by 28 can bring around $46,800, while a fully documented, numbers-matching, Concours correct example has sold for as much as $145,000. And then there is the strangest Z by 28 of all, the one that feels almost like a mistake Chevrolet forgot to erase. In 1968, Chevrolet built one Z by 28 convertible. Not a limited batch. Not a special dealer run. One car. A single factory-built 302-powered Z by 28 with a folding roof, created as a one-off prototype. For years, it lived in the shadows of Chevrolet history, appearing in footnotes and at concours events, always surrounded by the same question: why? General Motors has never offered a completely satisfying answer. But the car was built, and it survived. One engine, one convertible, one of the most unusual factory decisions of the muscle car era. On the racetrack, the 302 stopped being a curiosity and became a threat. Roger Penske was already building one of the most disciplined racing operations in America. His cars were not just fast, they were prepared with a level of precision that made other teams look careless. Behind the wheel was Mark Donohue, one of the most technically intelligent drivers of his generation. Donohue was not a wild man throwing a car around and hoping for the best. He was methodical, analytical, and brutally fast. He understood machines in a way few drivers did. If something worked, he could feel it. If something was wrong, he could explain it. In Trans Am's over 2-liter class, the Z28 became more than competitive. It became the car everyone had to answer. Donohue and Penske used the Camaro not like a blunt instrument, but like a sharpened tool. The 302's ability to rev, its durability at high engine speeds, and its strong breathing made it ideal for road racing. The Z by 28 took the Trans Am Manufacturers' Championship in 1968, then returned and won again in 1969. Back-to-back titles from an engine that began as a parts bin solution and was officially underrated by more than 80 horsepower. That is not just a racing success. That is engineering revenge. At the same time, the 302 proved it was not limited to road courses. In 1968, Dave Strickler took a Z/28 into IHRA Superstock competition and won the world title. That detail is important because drag racing and road racing ask very different questions from an engine. Road racing demands balance, throttle response, endurance, and the ability to live at high RPM lap after lap. Drag racing demands violence, acceleration, and the ability to convert every combustion event into forward motion immediately. The 302 answered both. That only happens when the architecture is fundamentally right. The official 7,000 RPM limit was not truly the end of the engine's ability. It was more like a conservative line drawn by engineers who understood the risks of letting the public know too much. Owners and racers who pushed the engine harder discovered there was more inside. With better cylinder heads, a more aggressive camshaft, and an improved intake setup, 8,000 RPM was possible. With the right supporting modifications, 500 horsepower could be achieved from a naturally aspirated 302 cubic inch engine designed more than half a century ago. That kind of headroom does not appear by accident. It means the base design had strength, breathing ability, and balance waiting beneath the factory tune. Another reason the 302 became legendary is that it is not completely unreachable. Many racing engines are built around rare castings, exotic parts, or factory-only pieces that normal enthusiasts can never truly duplicate. The 302 is different because it was assembled from production-based Chevrolet components. A dedicated builder can recreate the formula: a 283 crankshaft, a 327-based block with a 4-inch bore, the correct cylinder heads, camshaft, intake, and supporting parts. The recipe is known. The ingredients exist. Motor Trend's 357 horsepower replica proved that the legend was not built only from memory and exaggeration, but that also creates the darker side of the 302 story. Fakes. Because the engine can be recreated, it can also be counterfeited. Blocks from this era can look similar across different displacements. Casting numbers can overlap. Pad stampings can be forged by people who know exactly what collectors want to see. A clean stamp on the front pad is not enough. A real 302 has to make sense all the way through. Casting number, suffix code, journal size, internal specifications, date codes, and documentation all need to line up. Any single detail alone can lie. Serious collectors know this. Some buyers learned it only after paying real money for an engine that looked right until someone opened it up and revealed the truth. Still, no number, casting, or suffix code fully explains what made the 302 special. To understand that, you have to imagine the sound. A 327 had its own voice. A 350 had that deeper, broader, small block rumble. A big block Camaro sounded heavy, muscular, almost violent even at idle. The 302 was different. It was sharper, cleaner, more urgent. At low RPM, it had the familiar Chevrolet pulse. But as the tack climbed, the personality changed. The exhaust note tightened. The engine note hardened. Somewhere above 4,000 RPM, the 302 stopped sounding like a normal street V8 and started sounding like something built for a starting grid. That was the moment owners remembered. A big block Camaro could hammer forward on torque, shoving the car ahead with brute force. The Z/28 demanded patience and nerve. You had to let the 302 breathe. You had to keep your foot in it. You had to let the tach swing higher and higher until the engine came alive in that upper range. Then the car sharpened. The sound ripped through the cabin, and the whole machine seemed to wake up beneath your hands. The steering wheel buzzed. The shifter felt mechanical and direct. The engine did not just move the car, it pulled the driver into the rhythm of it. On a road course, that character mattered even more. Picture the Z28 coming out of a corner, front end settling, tires loading, the driver feeding in throttle as the 302 starts to climb. The sound rises from a growl to a hard metallic scream. The car does not leap forward on one huge wave of torque. It builds, stretches, and keeps pulling as the revs rise. The driver holds the gear longer than instinct says he should, because that is where the 302 lives. Not down low, not in lazy cruising. Up high, where the engine feels like it has found the air it was built to breathe. The tragedy of the 302 is that Chevrolet knew from the beginning it was temporary. It was built for a rule book, for a racing window, for a specific competitive problem. It was a weapon made for a moment. The engineers assembled it from borrowed parts, refined it just enough, raced it hard, won with it, and then watched the corporate machine move on. After 1969, the 302 disappeared. The Z28 continued, but with a 350 small block under the hood. The 350 was a strong engine. It was practical, torquey, and well suited to the street. It made sense for the direction Chevrolet wanted to go. But it was not the same kind of engine. It did not carry the same short stroke, high RPM edge. It did not have the same nervous, race-bred personality. The 302 was not retired because it failed. It was retired because it had succeeded too perfectly at the job it was created to do. It solved the rulebook problem. It won the championships. It gave the Z28 its soul. And then, almost as quickly as it had arrived, it was gone. That is what makes the Chevy 302 feel different from so many other great engines. It was not around long enough to become ordinary. It did not spend decades getting softened, enlarged, detuned, and turned into something more comfortable. It lived a short, intense life. 3 production years, just over 28,000 Z28s, 2 Trans Am Manufacturers Championships, 1 IHR Superstock World Title, 1 official horsepower rating almost nobody believes, 1 impossible convertible nobody can fully explain, and 1 engine note that still lives in the memory of people who heard a real Z28 climbing past 6,000 RPM with open road ahead. The Chevy 302 was not just an engine, it was a loophole turned into horsepower. It was Chevrolet engineering under pressure. It was a small block built not for lazy cruising, but for drivers willing to chase the top of the tachometer. It was a 283 crank and a 327 bore transformed into something greater than the sum of its parts. And in the strange way legends are made, maybe its short life helped preserve its magic. The 302 vanished before it could become common, before it could be watered down, before the world could fully tame it. More than 50 years later, the question still hangs in the air like exhaust after a hard launch. What if Chevrolet had kept going? What if the 302 had been refined into the 1970s instead of being replaced by the 350? What if Chevrolet had doubled down on the high RPM small block idea and developed it further for the street, the track, and the next generation of performance cars? The engineering foundation was clearly there. The racing results proved it. The sound proved it. The people who drove them never forgot it. But maybe that is exactly why the Chevy 302 remains so powerful in automotive memory. It did not stay long enough to fade. It arrived with a rulebook in its sights, screamed through 3 unforgettable years, won what it came to win, and disappeared. For a brief moment, Chevrolet built a small block that did not behave like a small block at all. It climbed, it screamed, it fought, and it won. And then it left behind something even more valuable than production numbers or dyno sheets. It left behind a legend.